team, and the confidence is high for this Wolverine team. The 8 wins already a school record. Maryland at 5-2. They've scored at least 12 goals in 6 of their 7 games. Did have a 2-game losing streak, but bounced back strong last weekend in Chapel Hill against the defending champs in a title game rematch. This is going to be important for Michigan to control possessions. With Ryan Flanagan and Ace Schroff, Michigan head coach John Paul told us this week that they cannot get into a track meet with the Terps.
And they don't want to. They have one of those pride in possession type offensive philosophies where they'll chew you away. It's similar to what you get out of Denver. It's similar to what you get out of Ohio State, where move the ball, and wait till you get the perfect matchup and the perfect opportunity, and then you'll start to attack.
Dan Morris in goal for Maryland, reigning Big Ten Specialist of the Week. P.J. Bogle, and that is saved by Morris. It's going to be Maryland ball. Curtis Corley chasing it toward the end line, and now the Terps will set up the clear. Maryland has been perfect on clears in 2 of its last 3 games.
You'll see a lot of this. Wes Janik and Adam DeMeo just running the ball out, picking it up end line to end line, and just taking advantage of their speed. The difference with Michigan is they're going to drop back a little bit. You may see some 10-man ride, but they want to get their defensive personnel on, which is going to make it a little bit easier for Maryland to clear it today.
Last week against the Tar Heels, Maryland was so good when hunting those early shots. They scored on their first 6 shots. Jared Bernhardt hits the cross. Hiked out of the goalie, out of the goal to scoop it up for the Wolverines. Good ride there by the Terps. They get it back. It's Rambo. Here's Rambo now at the top of the box. And Bernhardt, number 3 freshman coming out of high school. He's the best athlete on the field, an option quarterback down in Florida. Actually considered playing football at Navy, 10 and white.
The third Bernhardt at Maryland. He follows his brothers Jesse and Jake, who were phenomenal players at Maryland back in the 2011-2012 time.
Another pipe by the Terps. Here's Connor Kelly. Colin Heacock guarded by Eric Smith. Heacock gets a step, misses high.
See, early on, these 2-man games are giving Michigan a lot of trouble. I mean, it looks like every time you get a pick opportunity, you're able to get a step. So that's something to watch early on. Does Maryland keep going to these 2-man games, or is it just traditional alley dodges and dodges from X?
Bernhardt now on the invert for Maryland. He's one of those hybrid players and can create mismatch problems by going behind the cage.
I think when you look at Maryland's offense, the dynamic dodgers. You have Kelly there who gets it taken away, and then Bernhardt would be your other option of guys that can really break down a defense.
Yeah, good defense that time by Christian Walter, the senior from Hanover, New Hampshire. He's their best D-midi on ground balls, does have a couple of goals this season. First turnover for Maryland. They average more than 14 per game, and John Tillman told me last week he wants them to take maybe a few more risks than they normally do. And you know, the personality of this Maryland team, you saw them at Villanova, or against Villanova a few weeks ago. I saw them last week. It's a loose bunch, and that starts with Rambo and Heacock.
Yeah, that's Rambo. If you see who we have that clip of relaxing with Kark, where it's the interview with Rambo and Heacock is as entertaining as it gets. But those guys are always loose. They're not fazed by much, and they're experienced. They've been in College Park in what seems like forever, and nothing phases them. They lose a game or 2. They're fine. They know, let's keep it loose. Let's focus on Memorial Day weekend, because they've been there what seems like every year during their career.
This is Ian King. Good defense that time by Muller into the cross of the goalie Morris. Maryland has 7 long pole goals this season. Bryce Young had 3 last year. Skip pass. Maltz cannot handle it, and he's able to retrieve. Michigan able to get its defense set.
That's an area that Maryland struggled a little bit this year. Those skip passes, just drop passes. You look back to the Notre Dame game, you look at the Villanova game, there are 2 losses this year. A lot of good opportunities where they just drop the ball, which as you start to progress through the season, right, you get crisper, you get more confident, you handle a lot of those passes that you may not have handled early on.
Second midfield, now on for John Tillman's Terps. 35, the freshman Jack Wilson. 39, Ben Chisholm. Here's Heacock, he's got a goal. Good team defense there by Michigan. Now Rambo working on Eric Smith. Draws the slide, shoots wide, and Wilson there to back up. They've got Curran on defense, and let's see if Wilson attacks that matchup. He will.
But Maryland, I keep going at that. Those two-man games again.
Rambo to Maltz, second of the game for Maltz. Career point number 202 for Matt Rambo, who's now 6 points away from tying the great Frank Urso for sixth all time. 3-2 Michigan, rather Maryland.
Old Spice College Lacrosse is brought to you by Old Spice, the hardest working collection from Old Spice. Don't smell yourself short. Sector Spider ETFs. Visit them on the web at sectorspider.com. And Angry Orchard Hard Cider. Branch out.
3-2 Maryland, off to a roaring start here in College Park. Big Ten opener for these two. In case you missed any of the action, let's get you caught up. Colin Heacock unassisted to get the scoring started. Then it was Dylan Maltz unassisted.
The same story you've seen out of Maryland, but a little more aggressive than I would have expected out of Michigan, coming right at Curtis Corley there, Sutherland, and then Brent Noseworthy, the ball in and out of his stick as fast as anyone in the country. But again, Run DMC just keeps putting points up. Dylan Maltz to give him the 3-2 lead.
Maltz has a pair of goals. Noseworthy with his 29th of the season for Michigan, and Maltz has now also scored on his last 5 shots dating back to last game when he had a hat trick against Carolina. Face-off X, Michigan and Maryland, McConnell, and that's John Garino, who re-entered the circle of trust in that Villanova game a few weeks ago.
Early on in that Villanova game, Austin Henningsen struggled, really getting stuck on defense. I think at the X was one issue, but on defense was another. And they brought in John Garino, who played great in the second half and allowed Maryland to claw their way back into that Villanova game. And now you have a two-headed monster between Henningsen and Garino, both playing with confidence and playing great. And you're also going to get Will Bonaparte coming in the mix here as he gets healthy.
That was poked loose by Chase Young, a very underrated D-midi out of Philadelphia. You're right, Maryland, I think maybe caught off guard a little bit by how aggressive Michigan has been in the early going.
We expected them to be patient with the ball. They were trailing early on, but it is still the first quarter, so I thought they'd take their time offensively, and right away we had a two-man game, and Rocco Sutherland went right underneath and scores one, and then Brent Noseworthy gets his hand free and scores one, so playing more aggressive than we've seen in the past.
Maltz hits a pipe. That's the third pipe, I believe, already for Maryland. It's going to stay with the Terps. Here comes Rambo from the alley. Now Kelly has the shorty Young. Back up top, Rambo. Here's Maltz looking for the hat trick. Good look coming here, and Bernhardt buries it for his 11th of the season. 4-2 Maryland.
Dylan Maltz, the story so far today. He's got the 2 goals early on, and then we see it here. He's going to catch the ball right behind goal line extended, fight, put his shoulder down, and then you hit the freshman. Time and room from 12 yards, and it's tough for any goalie to stop that.
Jared Bernhardt has now registered a point in the first 8 games of his Terrapin career. They've got a good one.
Get used to that name, right? He's going to be the one holding down College Park here. You're going to lose Rambo and Heacock to graduation, Maltz to graduation, and it'll be a lot of Bernhardt for the next 3 years.
Another face-off won by Garino against McDonald.
I think that idea of Garino getting in the mix more, and you've got Henningsen, which you know is an established commodity, really. Garino coming back into the mix, and Bonaparte. When you look to late in the season, when Maryland you know is going to be involved come May, that's going to give them a huge advantage when you're asking guys to take a ton of face-offs Memorial Day weekend.
Garino was somebody who was Charlie Raffa's backup at one point, and then was passed by Henningsen and Will Bonaparte, and that's another guy coming back for Maryland. Bonaparte healthy this week, according to head coach John Tillman. He's been out for a little while.
Good problem to have, right? With how dominant you need to be at the X to have success in college lacrosse. You look at Ben Williams, you look at Baptiste, guys you're going to see later on this season or as we get into the playoff scenarios, and having a couple of guys that can be fresh is going to make a big difference.
Christian Walter has now caused a couple of turnovers for Michigan. Has his stick knocked loose by Rambo. And I believe that, or that's going to be an offsides, it looked like, yeah.
Oh.
And off the quick restart, Maryland gets the score, and it's 5-2. So after Michigan tied it at 2, 3 straight by Maryland, this one by Timmy Rotans, coming off a career-high 4-point game, and all that started by an aggressive ride.
Matt Rambo making plays all over, known for his scoring. Here's his ride. And then after the turnover, somebody's got to stop the ball. Great job by Rotans. We talked about early offense. Doesn't get much easier than that.
So Maryland responding with 3 straight unanswered goals.
So you talk about the Tewaaraton conversation every year, and you have a guy, Matt Rambo, who I don't think gets nearly enough credit. I mean, you look around the country and everybody's going to list their favorites, and Rambo has really never been in that conversation as he climbs his way to the leader in Maryland's all-time points record.
Sunday on ESPN, the NCAA Women's National Championship game from Dallas. It is an all-SEC affair. Mississippi State, with its win against UConn last night, will take on South Carolina at 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Did you stick around for the end of that game?
Caught it this morning, a little past my bedtime, but incredible. You talk about a team that's been as dominant as it gets in college sports in UConn over the past 111 games, but a thriller last night. And the big one's tonight, though.
Big one is tonight. You're a Carolina guy, and your UNC Tar Heels taking on Oregon. How healthy are Joel Berry's ankles? That might be the game.
This is going to be good to go. We've got phenomenal facilities at Carolina. I know they had him in the ice bath all week, but you'll get that. You'll get the big guys inside. And there'll be a lot of Kennedy Meeks tonight.
Yeah, Oregon playing without Chris Boucher, who tore his ACL in the Pac-12 tournament. He's one of their top big men. 3rd leading scorer, 2nd leading rebounder. Meanwhile, in this game, Michigan using a timeout. I like that call by John Paul. Settle his team down. And they haven't faced that much adversity this season. They had the one bad loss to Notre Dame. Other than that, they've had control or been in every game. And now down 5-2 to a very talented Maryland team, one that's been in the championship game the last 2 years on the road. John Paul trying to settle his team down.
Get
a timeout of Coach Tillman now.
So John Tillman wants a timeout with 1:43 to go in this opening quarter. Terps, the number 9 team in the country. One of the officials got trucked. Yikes. So I got to be honest with you. Holding that shoulder, maybe it's that arm, before the season started, I put on the stripes, I put on the cap, and I shadowed our colleague Mark Dixon for an exhibition at Homewood Field between Johns Hopkins and High Point. And somehow, despite I would say about 7 or 8 close calls, I did not get run
unscathed.
over. when you say head on a swivel, that is not an easy job to do what those men do.
It's chaos because guys aren't paying attention to you, right? At no point are you, especially coming off the wings. I mean, coming off the wings of faceoffs is an absolute war. And you see DiCaprio there staring at the ball. IDA, you've got one of the best players in the country on one hip, and you're not paying attention to the ref at all. So it can be a collision. And I mean, think about the health of faceoff guys, because they're essentially doing the same thing where they're just watching the ball, and guys are coming off the wing, just absolutely reckless trying to pick up ground balls.
I almost got trucked once by Cole Williams running out of the attack box or running out of the box. And that was a scary moment because when you're up close and personal, you realize how big he is.
6'5", yeah. You stand on the field with either of these teams, in Maryland and Michigan, I mean, you're talking big Division I athletes. And when you're a ref and you haven't really been banging into people too much lately, there is an adjustment there.
John Tillman, John Paul talking it over with the two other officials. So if one's got to come out, now you go short-handed, and how does this change the game?
It shouldn't. I mean, you may not have, you're going to get away with a little bit more, but it really shouldn't impact the flow of the game too much, right? I mean, so many of our calls in lacrosse are on the ball, and the refs are still going to be watching that. The box area, the offsides area you worry about, but it shouldn't change things too much in terms of what's called and what's not called. Maybe you miss an offsides, but these guys are professional. They're as good as it gets calling these games. So
let's go, D.
So Maryland ball, 1:43 to go. 39, Ben Chisholm, speedy second midfielder. Scored against Villanova this season, his only goal, and that was his first tally since 2015. There you see the speed. Now Rambo gets the pick from Chisholm. Rambo left hand free, and Matt Rambo season 4 unanswered for Maryland, 6-2 Terps.
We've talked about the two-man games really giving Michigan a lot of trouble, and here it is again. Matt Rambo sweeping for his left hand. Chisholm with the great pick, and it allows Rambo to get both hands free. Nobody steps out to play the ball, and I can promise you Matt Rambo has practiced that shot thousands of times in his career.
Rambo coming off back-to-back 40-goal seasons. Last year, he was the first player in program history with 40 goals and 30 assists. And if he continues his pace, he's got a chance to leave College Park as the all-time points leader at Maryland and the all-time leader in goals. A chance for the Terps to go early.
As good as he's been, in the national conversation, I don't think he gets nearly enough credit. His game isn't very diverse, right? It's cradle hard to your left hand, put your shoulder down and run through guys. But for how productive he's been over the past 4 years, second team All-American, I think, is as high as he's gotten. And would you be able to say, okay, the all-time leader in points at Maryland, or one of the top 5, has never been a first team All-American? I think that's a little surprising.
Yeah, 203 career points now. Closing in on 4th all-time. Frank Urso holds that spot. Urso was on that last Maryland team to win a championship, 1975. Rotans, he's got a goal today.
Michigan has stayed primarily man-to-man so far, and I think that's given them some trouble. When you talk about a two-man game, going into a zone defense, you can kind of take that away.
How about Bernhardt breaking ankles and then setting up Connor Kelly? It's 7-2 Maryland.
This is the future of lacrosse in College Park. You're going to lose Rambo and Heacock and Maltz, and here's what you got. Jared Bernhardt, Connor Kelly from 14, and get used to that because you're going to see plenty of that going forward. Attacking the short six, that's Mickey Schlosser. Athlete on athlete. And then Connor Kelly, just the laser to the top corner.
13th goal of the season for Kelly. He's wearing his customary number 40 jersey this week. There's been a couple of occasions where that 40 jersey didn't make it to the game and he had to wear 53. Last week, one of those instances, as Garino wins the faceoff. Garino all the way, has it knocked away. It comes to Rambo. He has it checked loose. And they say Rambo was pushed, loose ball push. Maryland has it, 16 seconds. Heacock will initiate against Andrew Hatton, the senior captain, number 2 for the Maize and Blue. And Heacock called for warding off. Good call as Chase Young met him. Final 10 seconds. Michigan has gone more than 6 minutes since its last shot. Hail Mary downfield into the cross of Morris, and that's how the first quarter ends. Maryland a couple of early goals. Michigan answered right back, and then the Terps reeled off 5 unanswered. 7-2 Maryland after 1. Welcome back to Old Spice College Lacrosse. You're watching the Big Ten on ESPN. 7-2 Maryland after 1 quarter. Jared Bernhardt, a goal and an assist. And he's the best athlete on the field. He was a 2-sport star while in high school down in Florida. Ran a run option offense as a quarterback. We've seen what he can do on the lacrosse field. His football highlights, equally impressive. Look at number 12, faking the option. There he goes. Almost went to Navy to play football.
Whole family of athletes. Talk about Jake and Jesse Bernhardt, his 2 brothers that played at Maryland, as athletic as anybody. And now Jared, obviously, dad's a football coach, works with the Houston Texans. You see, I think he's made a good decision with this lacrosse thing. I'd say it's worked out for him so far, and the future is very bright.
John Garino getting a lot of reps here at the face-off X, going up against Mike McDonnell. Maryland 6 out of 10 at the X. Chase Young, he's a good-looking D-mid. He's been all over the field, scoops this one up. That second half of that first quarter, Michigan did not even get any offensive opportunities. They didn't have the ball.
It was Maryland dominant in the ride game. They're obviously winning faceoffs. I think one of the things Michigan needs to do going forward, last year they had a lot of success turning those faceoffs into scraps. And you talked about Chase Young. I really like Nick DiCaprio's game. I think if they can turn these faceoffs into more 50-50 ground balls, they're going to have a lot more success. I think they may even have an advantage if you get the wing play involved, which is bold to say when you think about Isaiah Davis-Allen and Matt Neufeld. But that's where they need to have success. And if they can't, it's going to be a lot more of Maryland pushing the tempo offensively and Michigan not really getting the ball.
Mikey Schlosser wheels it around. Now it's Ian King. Risky pass. Morris got his stick on it. It'll stay with Michigan and Sutherland. Rocco Sutherland, marked by Chris Corley, who pound for pound is Maryland's strongest player. Sutherland, 29 for Michigan, had the first Wolverines goal. Now Schlosser, senior captain from California. Ian King gets through the double, lost it. Noseworthy falling down, still shot it. Michigan keeps it. Another opportunity, another save by Morris. Here's King. Turns, fires, and scores. Talked to Ian King yesterday. He said the game has to come to him. He's evolved as a player as a freshman. A school record 32 goals. You look at his numbers this year, now 18 goals, 16 assists.
You saw earlier on in this possession where he tries to do too much, tries to drive through 3 or 4 guys. Great save there from Dan Morris, then Noseworthy just flicking it back to help Michigan maintain possession. This is what you have to be careful of. Ian King being aggressive versus Ian King doing too much. Aggressive and effective, really. Drives the left side, gets the 5x5, gets his hands free, and does a great job. He can be a threat for Max. The one area you'd see is when they're losing 7-2 and they're trailing, if he's going to start to do too much. But if given the opportunity, he's as good as they get when it comes from dodging from behind the cage.
John Paul told me a few weeks back that this was a young man who was a shooting guard in basketball. He's a volume shooter at heart, and sometimes when his team is down, he'll put it all on his shoulders. They don't want him to do that.
Here we go. This is the 50-50 ground ball we talked about. Here you go.
And DiCaprio comes away with it for Michigan. Nick DiCaprio, sophomore from Egg Harbor, New Jersey. He's their best defender.
Really like his game. That's what we said. If you can make it a scrap and you can let those guys get involved, you're going to have a lot more assists because of DiCaprio's skill. If it's as simple as pinch and pop and Garino or Bonaparte's taking it or Henningsen's taking it, that's where you're in trouble. But making it a scrap is going to allow Michigan to get more possessions.
E.J. Bogle had 3 goals earlier this season in a win against Furman. Sutherland had it checked away by Corley. Corley all over him. Out of bounds. Who touched it last? Michigan did. Maryland ball. Good defense that time by Chris Corley. Rotans tries to B-button away from Schlosser, who's comfortable playing defense, but he'll run.
One of the things you may see Michigan do at times, sometimes in that 10-man ride, sometimes in just their drop-back ride, is Noseworthy may actually leave the field, and Mikey Schlosser will stay on a ride because of how athletic he is. He can kind of create some things, whereas Noseworthy may not be as athletic, may not be as effective in the ride.
Maryland has had 6 different goal scorers today. Last week, in a 15-7 win against Carolina, the Terps had 6 players with multiple goals. There's Bernhardt. He's got his second, and it's 8-2 Maryland, and Bernhardt already with a 3-point game.
I think this is what you're going to see more in the future of Jared Bernhardt, dodging from behind the cage, using that size and athleticism, just too big. Tough to stop that when he can just shoot right over your head. And you see here, change the direction, attacks 5x5, the island, hands free, and just too much size.
And Ryan, as a defense, what do you do? That time you saw the short stick Parker McKee on Bernhardt. When he goes back behind the cage, do you pull him? Do you put a short stick on him?
Well, that's tough because he carries the short stick back there, right? So it's not like you can just call him off right away. What I would do is I drop into a zone behind that, so you have your short stick D-midi right on him. Then you have essentially a 5-man zone behind it that allows you to send a long pull to it. I'm a little surprised we haven't seen Michigan run a zone yet, but I think we will get that sometime soon. 2
face-off violations against Michigan now. Kelly against the double. Picked up by Dixon Smith, 53, the Virginia transfer, 24 years old, and John Paul raved about the leadership that he brought to Michigan, and he also gets to play, Dixon that is, he gets to play with his younger brother Eric, and John Paul telling us he's made a big difference in the development of junior Eric Smith, number 36, who also plays defense.
It's helped a lot, right? That veteran presence, having that calming presence, especially when somebody's coming from Virginia that's played. They know what they're getting out of the Marylands, out of the Virginias of the world.
Nice job by Height to turn away the shot and the rebound. I was waiting for somebody to blow the whistle. Now the ball is in the cross of a Michigan player.
Should be playing, right? We should be playing.
We should be playing, and we will.
Seeing your U-view, Timmy Height exploding, driving his hands to the shot, and then the quick reaction. Maltz right on the crease, thinking he's got the easy putback, and a great job by Tommy Height, just quick hands and seeing the ball.
E.J. Bogle, St. Charles, Illinois. Now Decker, hard outside shot. He can hit triple digits. Schlosser, that was not a good shot. Morris with an easy save. No angle.
This is, now you kind of get in this game where, okay, we finally have possession, we take a bad shot, oh, now we're back on defense, and you're giving Maryland another opportunity. So would have liked to see Michigan be a little more patient there, work that ball through X, and a lot of times you get noseworthy coming off a pick when you get that through X, but they need to have a nice minute, 2-minute possession and give this defense a chance to catch their breath.
Yeah, Michigan does not have the depth to play this kind of defense against Maryland for as long as they've been going so far. You're already down 5 goals,
it'll get worse, right? Yeah. If you just continue giving them opportunity after opportunity and taking bad shots is not the best way to get back into this.
Here's Bernhardt. They have not had an answer for him. He's been breaking ankles, making guys fall. Rotans, good ball movement. Now Rambo. Rambo, great feed. And Height prevents it from slipping in.
Just gets a piece of it.
Take a look at your U view.
Tommy Height inside again. Just you see when he's inside, we saw it earlier on the Maltz goal and here on the Bernhardt shot, just exploding inside, trying to get big, and just gets a piece of that, which was enough to keep from rolling in.
You saw the way he flopped around. John Paul told me a few weeks back he's kind of like Dominik Hasek, the old Sabres goalie who was notorious for flying around the goal. He said it's an unconventional approach, but it's worked for Height, who came into this game leading the Big Ten in save percentage.
If you don't know where you're going, if the defense doesn't know where you're jumping, the shooter definitely doesn't know where you're going. So that is unconventional. It may actually give him a benefit on shots inside where it really is more a guessing game than anything.
Matthias lost at second. Midfield from Michigan turns it over. Transition opportunity for the Terps. At Neufeld, who's got 2 goals, the long pole with 28 on the back of his jersey. Maltz, he's got 2 goals. Now Heacock. Guarded by Hatton, a 3-year starter on defense for Michigan.
See, if I'm Michigan, this is where I drop into that zone defense. Right, change it up a little bit. You had an opportunity because it wasn't like Maryland was really pushing the tempo. But you drop back, give him a different look, and Height's playing well. So you give him an outside shot that may allow you to get another possession.
Well, I think Maryland realizes, too, hey, this defense is on its heels. Let's take our time.
Yep.
Heacock's shot goes behind the cage. Rambo tries to sneak it in, but he was in the crease. But if you're the Terps right now, Ryan, why not take your time? Because you know this defense is...
They're exhausted,
They're going to get exhausted. Make it a game of attrition with a 5-goal lead.
Yep. That's the tough part, right? We keep saying play zone, but the tough part is then you're not putting any pressure on the ball. Then it's the only way you're getting it back really is off a shot and a save.
A near turnover, and it may result in a turnover. It does.
Push.
Let's wait for the call. Yeah, they'll get Maryland with a push. NBA Sunday Showcase, Jazz and Spurs. Curtis Corley will go to the box, so Michigan will go man up.
So the aggressive clear for Michigan, Tommy Height, you see, throws it deep to Rocco Sutherland, and really probably could have gotten away with just not touching him, letting him fall out of bounds. But left, Michigan with the man up. Look for Noseworthy inside, and you have Curran and Schlosser up top.
Michigan 10 for 20 on the man up this season. That's not what they wanted to do. Out of bounds. Loose ball push on Maryland. Michigan will keep it. Time running out on that man up, and we're about to go back to even strength. And again, that's the second time Avery Myers unable to corral the pass, and it nearly turned it over.
That's tough, right? Man up, and you don't get a shot off in a game you're down 5 goals. It's going to drive Coach Paul and Coach Ford nuts.
Decker Curran. Baum played on the U.S. women's national lacrosse team in the 80s. Over to Myers. Vogel. Now it's King, who is the school's all-time leader in assists and points. And closing in on the goals mark, he lost his stick.
Be a play on.
Another whistle. There's a flag on the Fleet field. Interference.
2-4 white. Interference. 30 seconds. 2-4 white.
So this is on Nick Rosowski.
Yeah, this must be off ball. There may have been something on the crease here. Or it wasn't the ball. It wasn't on Ian King, right? Because
it's on Maryland, so another 30-second to man up for the Wolverines. Curran to King. There's the pass to the middle, and they got what they wanted. And Michigan able to capitalize. Brent Noseworthy with his 30th goal of the season. When he shoots, he does not miss. Came in shooting better than 54%.
Your traditional crease attackman. This is what they want inside. You get it just like that. On the shoulder, off the shoulder. 8-4 Maryland.
You may have seen that young man last year during Maryland's run to championship weekend. His name is Finn. The entire Maryland team shaved their head as Finn was battling cancer, and it's all part of team impact. And not just Finn for Maryland, but there's a young man by the name of Brendan who has become a similar figure for the Michigan players and for the Michigan team, and both Finn and Brendan here today, part of team impact. Great story.
Yeah, and this for kids in college, right? Lacrosse aside, but gives them great perspective, right? This allows them to take their focus off lacrosse, and there's greater meaning, right? They're impacting the lives of these young children and making a huge difference. And you see Maryland doing it, Michigan doing it, teams all across the country with similar players that are essentially adopting into their lacrosse family, and it gives these 20, 21, 22-year-old kids on the team a great perspective.
With Ryan Flanagan and East Schroff, Maryland with an 8-4 lead. It was tied at 2. The Terps closed the first quarter on a 5-0 run. Michigan's tacked on 2 since. Maryland 1. King's shot saved by Morris, and he'll get it back to set up the clear.
You see Michigan starting to change up the face-off X. You had Dixon Smith on the wing and Nick DiCaprio taking the draw, and going back to exactly what we were talking about earlier, trying to make those scraps, those 50-50 ground balls off the X, because they haven't really gotten a chance on the clamp. So expect to see more of that going forward, where it's really just a ground ball, a 3-on-3 ground ball battle versus your traditional try to win the clamp and go.
Last year when these two played up at the Big House in the elements, Michigan plus 12 on ground balls, plus 21 on shots, and came oh so close to pulling off the upset. Brian Cole scored the game winner for Maryland in the final minute.
Huge save with 16 seconds left from their first team All-American Kyle Bernlohr last year.
Kelly able to absorb the hit. Here's Bernhardt, 2 goals and an assist. That was an opportunity that time, but the pass not able to be handled by Maltz. This Michigan defense has been on the field for what seems like the duration of this first half. Kelly, left hand, bangs it in. Connor Kelly with his second. Number 4, Maryland.
I really like this kid's game. Reminds me of Mike Chanenchuk, the former All-American for Maryland. Just easy. Right to left split, down the alley, stick side high. That's way too easy for the Terps. You got to get a stick in his gloves. Stick side high. You want your goalie to make that save, but that's tough. You're not going to slide to your long pull, and one hand on your handle and reaching for him is not going to get it done.
When you look at Maryland's personnel, Ryan, Kelly, he can shoot with either hand, score with the left, he can score with the right. He can shoot on the run. He can move between attack and midfield. So can Jared Bernhardt. That creates a ton of matchup problems and conflicts of assignments when you're the defense.
It's really hard. I really like Connor Kelly's game. I think they need to do a lot with him dodging. I don't think they were doing that early on. I think we're starting to see more and more of that, where he's dodging and creating. You know what you have with Rambo and Heacock, right? You have big, strong attackmen. They're going to put their shoulder down and drive with their left hand.
That's the 3rd face-off violation against Michigan. Go man up for the first time today, and the Terps come into this game with the best man-up unit in the country, 10 out of 15.
face-off violation. 30 seconds. 15 blue. 30 seconds.
Well, they said 15 blue. That was Brent Noseworthy. I think they meant Nick DiCaprio.
Yep. So what you had is DiCaprio didn't really try to play the ball. He just went in and he hooked Henningsen's arms. And you can make it a scrap, but all he did was go in for body and tried to essentially rip his arm off his stick. And you're going to get called for that more times than not. You do have to give an attempt, or at least let him get the ball out of the back of his stick and then just play the face-off guy.
They want you to play the ball,
Yep.
not the man.
Yep.
Maryland has been surgical on the man up. That shot deflected. And it comes to Eric Smith for Michigan. And Michigan will be able to withstand the Maryland EMO. Unless they turn it over here, Maryland might have an opportunity. Wolverines have numbers, but they will not take it. And they'll use a timeout.
Offsides. No, they're offsides.
That's offsides.
Maryland's got numbers.
Good check by Height out of the goal.
That's
Smith keeps it up.
I guess you can kick sticks.
Only 2 refs now on the field, right? So you miss some of those delay games.
Yep.
Sloppy play, Brozowski. And now it appears we have a timeout. How about Tommy Height coming out of the cage?
Talked about him being a little different in the cage. Here he is out of the cage. Great play, because had he not, right, that would have been Louis Dubik one-on-one with Height. So great job coming out right in the chest, and good physical play out of the keeper.
We've got the Final Four tonight in basketball, the women's championship game tomorrow, and opening day on the diamond. 1 p.m. Eastern, Yankees and Rays, Tanaka and Archer, Giants and D-backs at 4 on ESPN2. And in the Sunday night marquee, the world champion Chicago Cubs against the St. Louis Cardinals. So Ryan, we have the Cubs winning their first World Series since 1908. The Cleveland Cavaliers won their first NBA title in franchise history. Why not Maryland lacrosse? 1975, it's been a drought of more than a generation. They have lost 9 times in the championship game since winning it all in 75.
This could be the year, right? You talk about Maryland. I think the other one is Notre Dame, right? Has never won before. I think you have to have them in the mix. You have Maryland in the mix. With the parity in college lacrosse this year, where the lower-ranked teams and the teams that are newer to the market are winning big games. This could be the year you finally get a new champion. We have Loyola and Denver the past few years, but I think this could be the year you get Maryland back, or I like Notre Dame.
When you look at lacrosse as an NCAA Division I sport, up until this decade, only 7 teams had won a championship. And in this decade, Duke, a first-time champion, beating Notre Dame in 2010, then adding 2 more. Loyola, a first-time champion, and Denver, a first-time champion. And just a week ago, if you looked at the top 5 in the poll, all 5 had never won a championship, and Notre Dame was the only one in that group that had even played in a semifinal.
Yep, yeah, I think that's the growth of the game, right? That's what we want. The expansion out west, right? Coach Tierney going to Denver, and the explosion in California, the explosion of the game in Denver and in Las Vegas and in the different markets of the country. I think that is going to help us continue to see more of these new first-time champions. Maryland, that's a traditional hotbed, right? They've been good forever, but you think about some of these different markets. Notre Dame, right? A team in Notre Dame, Indiana, becoming a national championship says huge things for the growth of our sport.
Yeah, certainly what Bill Tierney has done out there, and with Notre Dame and Kevin Corrigan, tough loss today, but you get the sense that's just a matter of time.
Yes, it's there. You love Ryder Garnsey, Garrett Epple, Sergio Perkovic, Shane Dawson. I mean, they're as good as anybody, top to bottom.
But Schlosser splitting a double team.
Right? Growth of lacrosse, the kid from San Francisco, may be the best athlete on the field.
You had a chance to coach him in his younger days, didn't you?
Coached him, with Chris Rotelli's advanced program out in San Francisco, and we talked before the game just how loaded. I mean, his team, Wiley Osborne's at Dartmouth, Joe Lang at Harvard, Duncan Hoskinson at Colgate, Schlosser at Michigan, just all over college lacrosse, guys from that Northern California area, and you're starting to get more of it from Southern California now as well.
Curran, he's got a hard shot, and Morris up to the task. That's a shot Michigan closest to the ball when it went out of bounds, and it's Bogle. Wolverines keep it. If they can get a goal here, now 4 goals, a manageable deficit at halftime. You can regroup and rearrange a few pieces.
Give your defense a chance to catch their breath, right? You can punch one in here, maybe get another possession, and get into halftime down 1. You're in pretty good shape, or down 4. Sorry, you're in pretty good shape.
There's Ian King, skips one over. That was a good look.
Noseworthy does not miss many of those.
30 goals on the season for Noseworthy. Came into the game 3rd in Division I. Who's there to back up? It's Michigan. Less than a minute to go.
By Curley.
Sutherland and Noseworthy, a little 2-man game. Now Curran on the invert. King shot it high, getting some good looks here, though.
Yep, you're starting to see some. There you had a pick for King inside. You'll get a pick for Noseworthy here soon inside.
There's Curran, turns back, no angle. Michigan has it with 33 seconds, 5 shots on this possession for the 19th ranked Wolverines. Here comes Schlosser. King, checked by Muller. Into the cross of Sutherland. Final 10 seconds of the half. Long possession. Can Michigan capitalize? Morris there for the backup, and Maryland with a big hold at the end of the first half.
That's a big stop, right? 6 or 7 shots on that possession, and a good look from Noseworthy inside.
Almost the buzzer sounds, and we go to halftime. Coming up, yes, we know how the Big Ten teams are ranked in the poll. Ryan will give you his Big Ten rankings. We'll show you what happened earlier today between Syracuse and Notre Dame, and we'll preview tomorrow night's matchup between Duke and North Carolina. Testudo with a 9-4 lead on the Maize and Blue. Welcome back to Old Spice College Lacrosse. The Big Ten opener between Michigan and Maryland. Terps jump down to a 7-2 lead. They lead a 9-4 as we are about ready for the start of the third quarter. With Ryan Flanagan and Ish Schroff, that vaunted Maryland attack, the DMC line, Dylan, Matt, Colin, well, they accounted for 6 points in the first half.
These guys are great on the field, great off the field. They're leaders of the Maryland locker room with their loose demeanor. When it comes to playing, though, Matt Rambo is going to be the heavy lefty scorer. Colin Heacock, 6'3", 215 pounds. Then Maltz, doing more dodging today than he typically does. But there you see him inside on the crease. That catches and finishes everything.
First half stats, Maryland +3 in shots. Both teams even in saves, almost even at the faceoff X. Although Michigan did commit 3 faceoff violations in the first half. Michigan 2 more turnovers.
That's the area, those faceoffs, I think, where Michigan really needs to get back in this. We said one of our keys to the game, they've got to be over 50%, and that's been an issue so far.
Jared Bernhardt, meanwhile, 2 goals and an assist. He's not one of the 3 Musketeers, but this is young D'Artagnan delivering.
This is the future of Maryland lacrosse. You saw there Bernhardt to Connor Kelly. Here, showing what he can do behind the cage, getting a 5x5 and using that size and athleticism to shoot over the Michigan defense. Get used to that name. This will be the key to the Maryland offense going forward.
We need to have a stat just for Bernhardt. Ankles broken. He's probably up to 3 in this game alone.
This alone, yeah. But every game, that's the fun thing about watching him. Every game, he's getting better and better and better. A lot of people have him in that top 5 conversation in what's become a very strong class of freshmen this year in college lacrosse. But the question becomes, next year, do you move him to attack or do you keep him at midfield?
That'll be a question for next year for John Tillman. The question right now for Michigan, how do the Wolverines get back into this game?
Starts at the X, right? You have to win some faceoffs, get possession. You see Nick DiCaprio going out there again. What you want to do if you're Michigan is turn this into a scrap. Make it a 50-50 ground ball. That's going to be where they have the best opportunity. It's not a great opportunity, right? You're still talking Isaiah Davis-Allen and Matt Neufeld coming off the wings. But for them to have success, this is going to have to be a 50-50 ground ball.
Michigan 8-1 entering play. The only loss to Notre Dame. They had the biggest win in school history last month, knocking off Penn, and Henningsen able to win the faceoff. But they're the two long poles, able to dodge it free. There's the 50-50 ground ball, but it comes to Maryland. And Isaiah Davis-Allen, one of the best two-way middies in lacrosse.
But that's what you're looking for, right? You had a chance at that one versus here you go. You've got possession back. You made them win it backwards and clear it, and you're able to get the ride back.
Well, they go early. Ian King, triple teamed, able to hang on to the ball. Maryland a couple of times able to knock the stick out of a Michigan player's hands. You go back to the last possession of the first half for Michigan, long possession. They got 6-7 shots.
Got your hidden ball trick, all right. Maryland identifies it right away. Yeah, that last possession where you started to feel like Michigan was starting to play with some confidence, play with some swagger and some fluidity, and now you get another possession, so an opportunity to kind of build on that rhythm that you were developing late in the first half.
Unfortunately for the Wolverines, they were unable to score on that possession. Here's Schlosser. Backing down his defender, turns and scores! Mikey Schlosser, brute force.
Talking to Coach Paul this week, he said it. Mikey Schlosser is a player that's got a bright future in Major League Lacrosse because of his size, because of his athleticism. Well, here you see it. Use that size, just bully your defensive midfielder and turn and let it go. Can go lefty, can go righty, and when you have a guy posted up at what was 10 by 10, 10 by 5 there, you've got to slide and help him out.
Schlosser, along with Ian King and Brent Noseworthy, account for 56% of Michigan's goals. Today, they've accounted for 4 of the 5, and if the Wolverines are to get back into this game, it's got to be the big 3.
Those are the ones. You talk about a kid from Ohio, and Ian King grew up on Long Island, but high school in Ohio. Noseworthy, a Canadian box goalie who's playing attack in the field game, and then the Northern San Francisco kid, Mikey Schlosser.
Face off to Maryland. Here's Rambo, a goal and an assist. 203 career points, 5th all time. Less than 30 away from Bob Boniello's all-time record of 231 at Maryland. Bernhardt, his pass gets away from Maltz. He has some trouble with it against the double over to Rambo. Crisp pass to Bernhardt. Gets past Young. Keeps his balance. Bernhardt has it knocked loose. This Michigan defense a little more aggressive, but I think they're going to get Eric Smith on a push. They do. It's a loose ball push. Now they say they had possession when the push happened, and Maryland will go man up for 30 seconds.
Thought that was a good physical play, but
spoken like a defenseman.
Yeah, ball's on the ground, it's a free-for-all, but apparently he had a stick, I guess.
30 seconds.
Chase Young, the junior, into the penalty bin. Another look.
Right, ground ball. I guess. A little bit. I'll give it to him.
Well, we'll find out here. As Ryan Boyle said, if ball lies or if ball doesn't lie.
Ball will lie.
Rotans, Bernhardt, good look. Pass deflected, shot deflected, and it comes to Height.
There you
ball
go.
Don't lie.
Ball don't lie. Now you got to leg it out. Here it is. This kid's got speed, right? Chase Young. He can run and needs a little help, though.
Schlosser able to split 2 defenders, still has it. Schlosser all the way. He's a one-man clear when he wants to be. Now Ian King, who told me yesterday he played on a club team in Long Island with Justin Gutterding from Duke, Ryan Lukovic of Virginia, and a Dylan Malloy of Brown. Pretty good roster.
Malloy was probably the one who coming off the bench there, right? I mean, in high school, right? He kind of peaked in college, but he was the one, the odd man out going in high school, and he's the one that wins the Thornton.
Here's Sutherland, marked by Corley. Decker Curran. Wide.
This is a matchup that Michigan's had an advantage with, right? Rocco Sutherland versus Curley. Sutherland's been able to run by him twice, so I think you feel good coming right off the end line here.
Noseworthy has 2 goals. An old school crease guy, according to his head coach, John Paul. Here's King. Has the shorty, but it's a good one in IDA. Curran looking to get free.
You got to move it now, right? Oh, you drew the slide. Get it out of your stick right away.
Muller taking away that right hand of Ian King. Now Schlosser. That's good defense that time by Isaiah Davis-Allen, who is essentially the lacrosse version of a cover corner.
He's as good as it gets, right? I mean, that's your Richard Sherman. That's your throwback Darrell Rivas of the great Jet teams back in 2010. You'll see hit. Teams will treat. Yeah, great. Marky Mark, quarterback. He will be. He's essentially a long pole, right? You get on. You put him on somebody, and they're going to be slow to dodge.
That was a push on Manis. Maryland's defense did the job, but I was going to say this should be a penalty called right now against Maryland. There was no reason for that from Nick Manis. The defense had done its job.
Yep, you got to stop. You're running it out and behind the play, right? Those are the calls that'll drive a coach nuts. Nonchalant here getting it started.
A loose ball push.
Okay. So we'll still be 6-on-6.
Michigan is connected on just 1 of its last 12. Schlosser against IDA. This has been a fun matchup.
These are big-time athletes, right? You're talking 2 of the faster players in college lacrosse.
Terrific ball movement. Michigan unable to capitalize. Maryland wins the race to the end line. The Terps get it back. Now they did everything but punctuate there.
That's right. That's the look you want.
There's IDA. He scored 2 goals against Michigan a couple of years ago.
We'll get that inside look to Noseworthy, who.
And Michigan will do that. They like to jam the ball to Noseworthy in tight spaces.
He gets it in and out of his stick so quick that if you're there a half second later, I mean, that very well could be a goal.
See if Maryland decides to hit the gas pedal one more time. They've hit cruise control for about the last half quarter and change.
Tell you, I'm still a little surprised we haven't seen zone defenses. We haven't seen kind of junk defenses out of Michigan. That's what Villanova had a lot of success with 2 weeks ago. Michigan is just stuck to man-to-man for most of the game.
Kelly, another crossbar by Maryland. Nine goals for Terps. 10 is their magic number. They have won 52 of their last 55 when scoring at least 10 goals.
Here's a matchup for Maryland. You have Heacock against the short stick.
Draws the slide. Passes out of the double to Rambo. Using the swim dodge. Nowhere to go. Good defense by Hatton. Able to jar it loose.
There you go. Got him. It's
Bernhardt,
a 2-man game.
Good look. Hat trick for the freshman.
We've been talking about this two-man game all day. It's given Michigan a ton of trouble, and here you have it again. Connor Kelly setting the pick on the long pole behind. Christian Walter needs to step out here, hedge, and basically push Bernhard off track. He doesn't. That's too easy for the freshman.
An Under Armour All-American, 13 goals now on the season. John Garino facing off. Michigan going back to Mike McDonald, the short stick at the X. They had tried Nick DiCaprio a couple of times. And Maryland countering with Garino. Isaiah Davis-Allen comes up with it.
McDonald wins the clamp there, pushes it out, then he just misses the ground ball.
IDA with 8 career goals. And we talked about Rambo and Heacock being the characters on this Maryland team, guys to keep the other players and the coaches loose. Davis-Allen is the leader, and he is the unquestioned leader of this team.
Absolutely. Everybody talked about Isaiah Davis-Allen, nothing but great things to say about him. When he speaks in front of that room of Terps, everybody listens. He's the one guy outside of the coaching staff that can really rip Rambo if necessary. Not that you need to do that often, but there's somebody that needs to have that conversation, telling the guys, hey, it's time to focus, it's time to get serious. Everyone's listening to IDA.
Adam DeMillo. That's the pick from Rambo. They'll work a two-man game. And Rambo will swing it now up top. Jack Wilson, the freshman from Wayne, Pennsylvania. This is Maltz. Wilson skips it. Heacock draws the double and shoots wide. You know, Heacock and Rambo, I hung around the two of them at Maryland practice last week in Chapel Hill, and it's like a married couple, older brother, little brother relationship. They argue about everything, but on field, you've watched their chemistry now for 4 years.
4 years, yep. Love playing together. Spend every second together seemingly, and there's the other part of it. Dylan Maltz.
Hey, don't forget about Dylan Maltz, the third part of Run DMC, off the feed from Rambo. And Maltz, by the way, with a hat trick, back-to-back hat tricks now for Maltz, who had 3 last week against Carolina. Rambo to Maltz. Sunday on ESPN, the Women's Basketball Championship Special. That's at Sunday at 5 Eastern, leading into Mississippi State and South Carolina playing for it all. The Bulldogs yesterday with one of the great upsets in the history of NCAA basketball, knocking off what looked to be an unbeatable UConn team. Back in the first quarter of our game, Mike Highland, one of the 3 officials today, he got run over. Sometimes you get caught in the line of fire. He hurt his shoulder. He would have to leave the game, but thankfully we found a backup. Kevin Forrester coming off the bench, wearing shorts. Kevin Forrester showed up, and he's now part of the officiating crew.
Steps in to save the day. All about out of the bullpen, ready to go.
Didn't bring the long pants, but it's a nice day in College Park.
Does that change things, right? Does that change the dynamic? Does he get some of these calls that the other guys weren't getting?
I'll tell you what, when I shadowed Mark Dixon as an official, I saw the way John Torpy at High Point and Dave Petramala, especially at Johns Hopkins, would ride the referees.
Tierney.
Tierney, I mean, I'm telling you, it's probably worth an extra possession or two if you do it the right way.
You do it the right way, yep.
I had a flag in my pocket. I was determined to throw one of them.
Petro, yep.
Never got it out of my pocket, though.
Give it to Coach Torpy.
Forrester was sitting on the couch getting ready for Duke, North Carolina tomorrow, and called into action here in College Park. That's a team player.
I think he's on his way to the airport, right? He's got to be headed to the airport soon, maybe first thing tomorrow morning. Where is Dixie? Well, Mark Dixon, right? He's a Maryland guy.
Where is Dixon? Was he not available? Here's Schlosser. That's a good takeaway by Neufeld, one of the best long stick middies. Neufeld's got a couple of goals this season, and he'll drop it off behind the IDA.
So I spent some time with Coach Tillman and Kevin Connery, their associate head coach, earlier this year, just talking about Matt Neufeld and how much potential he has. Right. So last year he tears his ACL. This is his first year back from that. I think next year is when you're going to really see him take that next step and become one of the premier players in college lacrosse.
Matt Rambo's already in Tier 1, and he now has a 4-point afternoon, 2 goals, 2 assists after that last tally, which makes it 12-5.
There it is, big grin on him, laughing. He's done this a ton of times, but what we've seen so many times from him, drop that shoulder, come hard for your left hand, and if you're a defenseman, it is hard to stop. He's built like a fire hydrant. That low center of gravity, that thick chest, and just too strong for a defenseman if you don't have that proper angle on him.
So, Ryan, we talked about this at the top of the broadcast. So much praise heaped on the likes of Rutgers and Penn State and Ohio State in the early part of the season, and you know what? Deservedly so. But we saw Johns Hopkins smoke Rutgers 12-6 last night. Maryland up 12-5 on Michigan. How should we interpret that?
Reversion to the mean. Right, I think Michigan's getting better, Rutgers is getting better, but I still think these teams are 2-3 years away maybe from really competing with the likes of Hopkins and Maryland on a consistent basis, right? You're going to get wins, but the play in the Big Ten is going to be a dogfight every week. But I think these teams, the Marylands of the world, the Johns Hopkins of the world, are just still a little bit deeper, a little bit more of a bench. And I think you look at the competition that Maryland's, right? If you look at Maryland's schedule through the first half of the season, it doesn't get that much tougher. I mean, everybody they played seems like a national title contender.
Or Hopkins.
Yep.
Hopkins played the toughest schedule in the country.
Yep. Play Virginia, play Loyola. Every week those guys are going through dogfights. And not that Michigan hasn't played tough games, but Cleveland State, Lafayette, Detroit, Bellarmine, Maryland, Navy, St. Joe's, High Point, Yale, Notre Dame, an Albany game that was postponed, Villanova, who could very well be a playoff team by the end of the year. Just a little different still.
Let's see what the penalty is here. Yep.
Cheacock right in the back.
So Michigan goes man up. Came into the game 10 for 20. 1 for 2 today. Avery Myers, the freshman, and he is part of this Michigan Foundation, part of a top 15 class. They're recruiting well. They're going to get new facilities next year. And you talk to people around the sport. Morris turns that one away. It comes to Sutherland, unable to hold on. In Division I lacrosse, with the Big Ten banner and with all that Michigan has to sell, it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when this program moves into the elite level. And, you know, you brought up their schedule. I think that's smart scheduling by John Paul. You're trying to build a program, instill confidence. The only teams they've played up until this point with winning records, Penn, Notre Dame, and now Maryland. I think that's smart. Build some confidence, get some wins, bank some of those wins. That makes it easier to recruit. You can point to the record.
Yeah, you do at the end of the day, right? Finishing the year, call it 10-5 or whatever it is. If that is a selling point to recruits, and that will make a difference after several years of it. That's where 2-3 years in a row that gap closes.
Connor Kelly with his third goal, third Terp with a hat trick today.
That's an offensive mid. You see Decker Kerr in there playing defense. And then a tough angle slide. Connor Kelly's too good, gets underneath it. And another guy, right? You talk about the growth of Jared Bernhardt, or Connor Kelly had a similar growth pattern his freshman year and has continued to get better and better every year. And as he gets more involved in this offense, just makes them that much more dynamic.
Now, you saw him play some attack last week against North Carolina. We see Bernhardt quite a bit on those inverts.
So you'll see a lot of Connor Kelly. Like right now, you'll see him start at the point on the faceoff. So if Garino's able to win that forward for a fast break, you'll see Connor Kelly just sitting there up at 15 yards, getting ready to shoot it.
Nice scoop by Neufeld. got a whistle. Timeout called with 3:23 to go in this third quarter by Maryland. Terps have won 7 straight faceoffs, and this meeting, in contrast to what happened when these two teams played last year, at the Big House, the elements in full effect on the 2nd of April. Michigan led at the half, had the edge in ground balls and shots. Maryland with a late goal from Brian Cole with 43 seconds left. Kyle Bernlohr, a couple of big saves down the stretch. And Maryland escaped with an 8-7 win. And really for Michigan, one of the themes in that game and even leading into this season, can they get a signature win? They got one against Penn, first win against a ranked team in program history. This Big Ten gauntlet's going to be hard. And even if they don't win another game the rest of the season, this season has already brought a lot of promise to the future of Michigan.
You talked about their recruiting class earlier. I mean, they're going to get those new facilities, a new locker room at Michigan going forward. So there's a lot to like. You always hear Paul Carcaterra talk about buying stock, right? This is a team that you would buy the stock of, right? In the future, there should be a powerhouse.
I would not take stock advice from Carcaterra, though.
I would not. That's a fair point. In lacrosse terms, we will buy. I will take Michigan going forward, Ohio State going forward, Penn State, right? You said it, that Big Ten label on a lacrosse program and the resources that all of these teams have, right? Every one of these guys has big-time football, big-time basketball that's going to allow them to do some things that a smaller lacrosse program may not be able to do. When you speak directly, just facilities, right? The athletes are working out in the same facilities that potentially the basketball team or the baseball team or the soccer teams at these bigger schools are working out at. And that makes a big difference when you're recruiting what is 13-year-olds at this point.
John Paul, Michigan's head coach, has said he looks at Notre Dame as a blueprint that Michigan can follow. But when you look at the evolution and growth of Notre Dame lacrosse, for so long, Notre Dame was a geographic outlier. It made it tough to recruit. Now the game is spread. There's more talent all around. They were in the Great Western Lacrosse League for so long. And Notre Dame, when did they really get going? It was when more talent was available in some of these outlier areas that were maybe not as talent-rich previously, and it was when Notre Dame flew under the Big East banner and later the ACC banner. Well, Michigan has already done a lot of that legwork, so I would think they'd accelerate quicker.
Much quicker, yep.
More kids to pick from, and you've got the Big Ten banner, and just look at this conference.
Bigger pool, yep, more kids to pick from. They are somebody that may really have an advantage in this early recruiting game, right? As the Marylands of the world, the Carolinas of the world, as they start recruiting 9th graders, and Michigan waits to see some late blooming 10th graders, 11th graders, they really could benefit from that. They're also in that game of recruiting some of the 9th graders, which is a necessary evil at this point. But I'm with you. I think they should get better faster. And the phrase we always go to, right? You want players that could play for anybody in the country. Then you want players that could start for anybody in the country. And then you want players that would star for anybody in the country. And that's what Coach Corrigan has said for so long, and you're starting to see that, right? Mikey Schlosser, Ian King, Decker Curran, these guys could play for just about anybody in the country. Would they star? No, but that's kind of the next step in the progression.
Now on the flip side, Penn State is coming. Ohio State, not that far removed from back-to-back trips to the quarterfinals, and they might have a potential championship weekend caliber team this year.
We could say, you could say the same thing.
Rutgers is coming, and Maryland and Hopkins aren't going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. Nope. And the Cordish Center at Johns Hopkins, we talked about facilities. Well, the Cordish Center is as nice as anything in the country. So nothing is changing there. And the tradition at Johns Hopkins and the tradition at Maryland, that's not going anywhere either, right? So it is going to be difficult for those guys. The flip side is that there are a lot more lacrosse players. There's a lot of really good young coaches out there as well that are going to make some of these teams competitors pretty quickly. You look at what a guy like Coach Shamati at Richmond's been doing very quickly, building them into a national competitor, in a very short period. Coach
Torpy, Boston University, High Point.
Yep. So it's going to get more competitive. The good thing is the growth of the game, right? What's happening faster? The sport is growing, or these teams are trying to fight for talent. And I think every coach we talk to is saying there's just so many good lacrosse players out there that you can field a good team by getting kids from any part of the country or Canada wherever in the world there's good lacrosse.
And you'll start to see coaches change some of that recruiting philosophy. I think back off of early recruiting as Ben Chisholm wheels around, his shot stopped. Paul Carcaterra and I were in Charlottesville a few weeks back and talking to Lars Tiffany. He said, listen, they're not going to honor verbal commitments unless a kid tells them, no, coach, I'm committed to somebody else. And we see that in football and basketball all the time. If you're verbally committed, other teams, other coaches, other programs still go after you.
That's what
in
it's
lacrosse, that's been taboo and an unwritten code for so long. Well, now you've got a number of coaches that say, hey, why should we say no when a kid who makes up his mind in 8th or 9th grade sometimes.
The gloves are off. Yep.
In 11th and 12th grade, he's allowed to change his mind, and we should have a spot open for him.
Absolutely. And we had a great conversation 2 weeks ago with Coach Tillman about this, about recruiting some of these young kids. And we can get in more of that in the fourth quarter.
We will. He's Ryan Flanagan. I'm Anish Shroff. Maryland in full control. 5 on Michigan. 3 in the books in College Park. It's the Big Ten opener between the Terps and Wolverines. You're watching Old Spice College Lacrosse alongside Ryan Flanagan and Anish Shroff. Maryland with an 8-goal lead as we go to the fourth quarter in College Park. Big Ten opener for these two schools. Terps won last week. They won by 8 on the road against defending champion North Carolina. Michigan rode into this game on a 4-game win streak, but a not so subtle greeting to Big Ten play for the streaking Wolverines. Nick DiCaprio, the long pole. That's Will Bonaparte getting in on the action. He had been hurt for a few weeks for Maryland. Now Tillman getting some of his backup some run. And the faceoff comes to Michigan. Here's Brent Noseworthy. Noseworthy has 2 of the 5 Michigan goals. See the scoring drought graphic. That seems to be par for the course when Maryland is involved.
Their defense, right? They just pack it in. I think Dan Morris has had a great season, and you knew he was going to be good coming into the year, but I think he's outperformed expectations. But they pack it in, and all those guys every year, right? They're just so talented defensively, and then having guys like Isaiah Davis-Allen always helps.
Talking to Dan Morris last week, he admitted that he felt some pressure following in the footsteps of Kyle Bernlohr and Nico Amato, both multiple-time All-American goalies at Maryland, but he also learned a lot playing behind both of them. He said from Bernlohr he learned about patience.
Very different guys, right? Nico Amato, energetic, aggressive, kind of that old-school Brian Doherty attitude with a ton of confidence, and then the other side of it, right, with Kyle Bernlohr is very patient, cerebral.
Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah, and he said from Bernlohr, the patience, the preparation, and he said from Nico Amato, I learned about owning the cage.
Yep.
That time Bogle gets one past Morris to make it 13-6, but yeah, Morris said, you know, he roomed with Bernlohr on the road last year and playing behind Nico Amato. He said you try to beg and borrow from both of those guys.
Yep. None of us, right? None of us created this game. Everybody took a little bit different piece and grew from it, and that's exactly what you got. And Nico Amato very confident in the cage and commanding the defense, and then Bernlohr, like you said, just sit back, patient, like very, very studious in how he approaches the game, and different approaches that worked great. And Morris will have a good year this year. He's at 56%, and by the time he's done, it's going to be the same conversation for another young guy that comes in and says, you know, I felt pressure coming in behind Dan Morris, who was a 2-year starter at Maryland and probably played in at least one Final Four.
That's a nice little pipeline. It's Socrates, Plato, Aristotle.
Yep.
So whoever comes after Dan Morris is Alexander the Great. Ian King, number 10 for the Maize and Blue, looking to get on the board with another goal as Michigan just got its first goal in more than 15 minutes. King's got a chance to do something unique. He's closing in on the all-time record for goals, and if he gets that, he'll have the all-time record for goals, assists, and points at Michigan. And he's got a chance at some point this season to also hold the single-season records for goals, assists, and points. Now, that single-season goals record, won't last because Noseworthy is going to break it at some point this year, and King set that mark as a freshman with 32. But at one point in his Michigan career, in the young history of Michigan lacrosse, King's going to have a chance to be the all-time leader and the single-season leader in goals, assists, and points. That's pretty impressive.
50, 60 years down the road, that's going to be his legacy, right?
That's pretty good.
Michigan's won numerous national championships and is a powerhouse every year. He will be the guy that got it started.
He'll be the answer to a trivia question. Yep. Schlosser beats his man, beats Morris High, and a couple of quick goals from Michigan. It's 13-7. Tell you what, Schlosser's a good-looking player.
Good-looking athlete, right? I mean, rumor is he's a 4.4 40-yard dash guy and has the size, can put his shoulder down and run by, and you see it there, just stinging the corner. We said earlier, he's a guy that's got a very bright future in Major League Lacrosse, starting up this summer, but that ability to go two ways, that ability to put your shoulder down and run through people makes a big difference when you get to the MOL.
I asked him yesterday, what do you do to maintain the flow? He said nothing. You buy that?
Just no. Got to be a Head and Shoulders guy, maybe.
I would think it's premium shelf shampoo. Come on.
It's a nice mullet, right? That's what it was early. Maybe it's fully grown now. Early on, he had the mullet going, which was great, but a lot of personality.
Well, Bonaparte wins the faceoff for Maryland. We've got a timeout by the Terps, their final timeout of this second half, and it's good to see Bonaparte win a couple of faceoffs if you're John Tillman.
I'll tell you, it's going to be tough. Who do you go to, right? You have Bonaparte, Henningsen, and Garino. And Henningsen was, right, the established starter, and then he struggles a little bit, and Garino comes in. And at the time, Bonaparte's not even healthy, so he starts to get healthy, and he's in the mix. And the trouble of riches, right? You have all three of these guys that can play at all three are former starters at some point during their Maryland career.
There's a lot of lacrosse left. We've got a full month until we get to our selection show, and another week after that until the playoffs get started with the first round. But right now, if I would say to you, one team you have the most confidence in to get to championship weekend, is it Maryland?
I saw them 2 weeks ago against Villanova. So no, right? So you see that game, and they looked bad, throwing the ball away all over the place.
Do you chalk some of that up to, though,
the 2 weeks
again,
off?
2 weeks between games, going up to Albany, not playing, and they get off to a slow start in that game.
Are they in? You could say the same, right? If you asked me the same thing on Denver, I'd say, well, no, I watched them play against Ohio State, right? And it's the same conversation. So, but I would say of the four, right? You're gonna have four teams in the Final Four. I would definitely have Maryland in it. I would have Notre Dame in it, and I would have Denver in it. I don't know if it's hard to say, oh, Penn State should be in it or Ohio State should be in it, despite those, because they've never been there. Right?
And you want to see more, I think, from those teams, right?
Yep. Whereas with these teams, with the three we mentioned, okay, these guys have all been there before. They all have had success there. Maryland, not in a long time, but they're in the championship game seemingly every year. So I think if I had to pick four teams, right, I'd probably say those three, and then flip a coin for the last, right? Maybe it's Penn State, maybe it's Hofstra. They've played very well so far. Maybe it's Hopkins, right? I mean, they're a team that, for as long as you can remember, kind of peaked at the right time of year in May. So, and offensively with Hopkins, I think you get worried. If Moreland can stay strong and stay healthy, I think they're a team you got to consider. If they can figure out the goalie thing, right, that we've seen last night. You saw Turnbaugh come in for Logan.
Bernhardt behind the cage. Now it looks like we're seeing a zone from Michigan. Maltz hits the crossbar. I've got another team for you, and I wasn't a big believer in them because they had won so many close games, but after today, as Height saves the Rambo shot, it's Syracuse.
Yep.
7 straight one-goal games. They're 6-1. And listen, we've seen better Syracuse attacks in the past, but they've shuffled up their lineup. Trimboli's made a difference. They seem to have absorbed the loss of Nick Mellon better than most people would have thought.
Yep.
You win some of these close games, confidence grows.
The thing that concerns me there is in goal. I think Evan Malloy has been sufficient, but I don't think he's been great. And I think, like you said, at the attack unit, there's just not a whole lot there. Teams are going to start to double pull them, right? And you're probably going to short stick Jordan Evans, which is incredible to say. But I think concerns there, right? That attack unit and the goalie. The flip side is you have Ben Williams. So if Ben Williams gets hot at the right time, they're obviously in the mix for anything. And then you have Marino, you have Salcido. They do have the known commodities there offensively. Keep in mind, we're saying this after they just lost to Notre Dame today, who we were saying.
Beat Notre Dame.
Yeah,
They beat Notre Dame.
yeah, sorry, yep. Who we were just saying should be in the Final Four. They just beat them, 2 hours ago?
Yeah, they're 3-0 in the ACC. They still have to play North Carolina. Again, they haven't looked overly impressive in some of these wins, but when you look at the full body of work, the one loss was to Army, which is currently a top 10 team.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I doubted them for a while. Watching this game, especially the first half, I've become more of a believer now in Syracuse moving forward. You would think they've accrued some cumulative confidence winning these close games.
The challenge with them, I think, is what happens if Mariano has a bad game
or
Ben Williams has a bad game, right? They lean so
Ben Williams
heavily.
had a bad game against Duke, and they still won in overtime.
Yeah, yep. Which is a big win, right? I mean, another team that plays well kind of late in the year every year.
Kern was in the crease. Nice feed, though, from Schlosser. 13-7, Maryland. Well, Quint said it in his column on Inside Lacrosse. Maryland is where the Big Ten still runs through. Got to go through College Park. Clark and I said it when we saw them last week in Chapel Hill. And Ryan, I don't think anything in this game has changed our mind about the Big Ten race this season.
No,
Penn State, Ohio State, Rutgers, more power to you.
You're getting there.
You got to go through the Turtles.
Yep, you're getting there. And if it changes this year, great. I think next year is when you really could see it change. I think Penn State's very young and very good.
Chisholm with a nice move. The assist by Kelly, 14-7. And that's a new goalie for Michigan, Robbie Zunino, the senior out of Berwyn, Pennsylvania.
Great feed from Kelly. And you said it, he can go left, he can go righty there. Just great feed across the field. Just forget to cover Chisholm, come out of the box.
Second goal of the season for the senior out of Davidsonville, Maryland. He's been running a lot on the second midfield, has some speed.
Scored his first goal earlier this year since 2015, right? So it's a year of nothing and coming out, and a guy that's gotten better throughout his career, but it's just been so difficult to get on the field with how loaded Maryland's been at the midfield. Stuck to it, getting more and more time consistently running on that second midfield line as a senior.
John Paul turning to his second midfield. This is a chance to get some of those guys reps, and even if this game is a lost cause, you want those guys to be productive going forward. Brandon Shima, number 42, playing in place of Patrick Tracy, out with a personal issue. Here's B.J. Mathias. With Mathias, he is almost all right hand. The Derek Zoolander of lacrosse. He's not going to go left on you. There's Shima. King. Skips one to Noseworthy, looking for a hat trick. And Brent Noseworthy with his third consecutive hat trick. 31 goals on the season now for the sophomore out of Canada.
Love it. Box goalie, field sniper. There it is, in and out, the quick face dodge. Put it home.
Old Spice College Lacrosse is brought to you by Old Spice, the hardest working collection from Old Spice. Don't smell yourself short.
Sunday on ESPN at 5 p.m. Eastern, the Women's Basketball Championship Special, followed by the championship game, Mississippi State and South Carolina, an all-SEC affair. Gamecocks with both their men's and women's team in the Final Four. Mississippi State with a stunning upset of UConn last night. That game 6 p.m. Sunday on ESPN. Well, teams that have won a championship in lacrosse and basketball, a little crossover. Duke has done it a couple of times. Syracuse. Carolina swept the men's and women's lacrosse title last year. 2 wins away from a championship. So, Ryan Flanagan, you're a North Carolina Tar Heel. How do you watch these high-stakes basketball games? Are you one of these guys who You got to have your Tar Heel buddies with you. You go to a sports bar, or you locked in by yourself in front of your TV watching.
So you said I'm glad you said high stakes, because I admittedly do not follow it until the Duke games. Right, I'll watch Duke Carolina basketball games because you kind of have to watch those. The game tonight, I will. My girlfriend is a UNC grad as well, so fortunately we can just sit there and do that. I don't need to be in the bar or the restaurant to watch it, unless I'm in Chapel Hill. If I can get up to Chapel Hill and watch a game at top of the hill or watch a game out on the porch at Bob's, 100% okay with that. But tonight, it'll be focused. Popcorn ready. Watch Justin Jackson hit his shots. Joel Berry, ankle feels good. He'll have them both taped up.
Confidence level, scale of 1 to 10. What are you feeling?
I'll be honest. I think Oregon. So the thing that scares me is athletic teams. I think athletic teams, just like in lacrosse, right? If a team's athletic, it can go any way, depending on who's hitting shots. And Oregon's athletic, so that worries me a little bit. I'd probably say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably say a 9.5.
Wow!
Wow! No, probably a 7.5. I think we are big and good. I don't know. Joel Berry is the wild card, right? If he's taking poor shots and his ankles aren't.
If he can't guard anybody with those ankles, that's a problem.
That's a problem. So I think we'll be okay because of how big we are, but it is the Final Four.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what scares me. If we do win this one and South Carolina wins it, because that's another athletic team, that worries me. Just because you have a quick turnaround and you're playing a real athletic and a really good defensive team in South Carolina.
And a team that's figured out offense down the stretch. Rambo's shot turned away by Zanino.
You know, what a good out of Joel Berry in 2 games in 72 hours.
Another pipe, that time by Maltz, who could have easily had a 5-goal afternoon today. 14-8 the score here in College Park, with Ryan Flanagan and Ish Schroff coming up next. A little SEC softball from Oxford, Mississippi. Michigan came into this game 8-1. Maryland came in 5-2. Terps got off to a fast start. They led 7-2 after 1 quarter. As Michigan calls a timeout, Terps pulled away in the third, going up 13-5 at the end of 3, and it's 14-8 now with 6:31 left. And you start to look ahead for both these teams. Maryland, next up, Penn State, currently ranked number 2 in the country. And if Penn State is able to beat Ohio State tomorrow, that might be a top-ranked Penn State team next week.
Yep, that could be number 1 Penn State. Albany is one that got tricky real quick, right? Because early on that was a Saturday game, and now you've kind of slid in there. You're coming off Penn State. 4 days later, you're playing Albany, which looks like a top 5, top 10 team in the country, and then turn around 4 days later and play Rutgers, who was ranked number 1 in the country, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, Rutgers actually now at number 10, and Ohio State, another top 5 team. The Big Ten coming into this weekend had 4 teams in the top 10, all 6 teams in the conference ranked in the top 20. And then, oh, by the way, the big rival at the end at Johns Hopkins. The Big Ten is going to be a gauntlet, and that Albany game you mentioned, it's tricky because at the pace that Albany plays, boy, that's a midweek game that's going to test your legs and that's going to exhaust you a little bit.
You're running. Yep, your guys running. And for a Maryland team that's not that deep, you have a real good first line. Your attack unit, Louis Dubik's healthy, so you get a little bit more there at attack, and they'll float in the second midfield, but they lean so heavily on Bernhardt, Kelly, and Rotans at midfield. And when you're asking to go 110 miles an hour against Albany for 60 minutes, that's going to be tough.
And then you look at who they play after Albany. You play Rutgers, a team that can go up and down a little bit too. So, that's the game. Even if you beat Albany, you may be paying for it the weekend against Rutgers.
And then, like you said, then you go into Ohio State and Hopkins, which are going to be tough games, which are always tough games. And then you flip right into the Big Ten tournament where you're going to play probably a Hopkins and a Penn State and Ohio State yet again.
Michigan using the 10-man ride, bringing the goalie out, down 6 minutes to play. Schlosser got a bit of a head of steam. Big Ten lacrosse is going to be fun to watch this year, with 4, maybe 5 teams having a shot to get into the NCAA tournament. And I would not count out Michigan from maybe spoiling somebody's season here in conference play. It is a confident group.
they're going to get one, right? I mean, you're going to have a day going forward, and one of these big things is they're too good offensively. You look at Schlosser and King and Declan Kerr, and these guys are going to have a day where they're all firing, everybody's playing well, and like you said, they have the potential to knock somebody out of that Big Ten tournament if they can get everything falling their way on the right day.
Yeah, they get Rutgers in an 11 a.m. game, and then the one that could be potentially interesting is Ohio State. That's the day of the Michigan spring game. So a lot of football fans there who just don't like anything
red.
That's scarlet and gray, right?
Yep. I think that's going to be the interesting one, right? You're playing in front of – the game is very different when you're playing in front of 40, 50,000 fans. Fortunately for Ohio State, they've done this numerous times. Last year, they did the same thing before the Ohio State spring game. So both teams are used to playing in that crowd, but it changes things, right? When you have 21-year-olds, 20-year-olds that are playing in front of 40,000 people for the first time, you're holding your stick a little bit tighter. Those shots aren't falling as easily, and that's where you have an opportunity to steal one that you may not have had on a neutral site or on a normal Saturday afternoon.
Rambo, 2 goals, 2 assists. Jack Wilson.
A couple whacks here. There you go.
And there's a flag. Louis Dubik now. He's been the 4th attackman this season, getting some minutes in the second half. Maryland will run some clock. McKeon Young cannot jar it loose from DeMillo. And it's Wilson again. Shot clock on against Maryland, and they're able to score. Jack Wilson with his first career goal, the freshman out of Wayne, Pennsylvania, at the 3:47 mark of the 4th.
Michigan has to chase at this point, trying to take the ball away, and gets a little too spread out. Jack Wilson finds some space inside and finishes it off the assist from Chisholm, who now is 1-1 on the day.
Maryland today has scored on 15 of 38 shots. That's pretty good. This after scoring on 15 of 27 shots last week.
So many of them are inside, right? You talk about teams that have high shooting percentage, and Maryland's going to benefit from some of those shots coming off Maltz inside, or Rambo and Heacock, right? That lefty 5x5 spot that we see them take so many shots of. And it's really a matter of if Bernhardt and Kelly are shooting well from the outside with time and room, and they can get the ball on cage, and that shooting percentage is going to be high every single game.
The goal wipes out the flag. Henningsen and DiCaprio the long pole. DiCaprio had only taken 3 faceoffs coming into the game. Michigan has just tried anything and everything at the X today. Terps have won 16 out of 27 faceoffs.
They're man down, yeah. So that's what made that faceoff difficult, is you have nobody on the wing. Usually you'd have somebody tie up, and when Bonaparte shot it out to the wing, there'd be somebody to contest the ground ball. But here, that slash call on Michigan's going to leave them down a man for a minute.
.33 Tim Monahan, a sophomore, top 15 recruit coming out of high school 2 years ago. And this one sails toward the midfield line, scooped up by Will Snyder. Monahan figured, why not?
These are all guys going forward. We've talked about the graduation that's about to hit this Maryland team. You're going to lose Rambo. You're going to lose Heacock, Maltz. You're going to lose Isaiah Davis-Allen. You're going to lose Tim Muller. You do return Connor Kelly and Bernhardt, but a lot of these guys that are getting precious minutes today are who you should expect to see in the 2018 season, 2019 season for Maryland versus the Heacocks and Rambos, who have been, it seems like they've been in College Park forever now.
Dubik behind the cage, his feed, and that was to Monahan, who was in the crease. For those looking for college softball, Kentucky Ole Miss has begun on ESPN News. We'll join that game in progress at the conclusion of this game. There's Michigan looking to push. Down 7 goals. Sometimes the long poles get a little thirsty.
Box fake your attackman and just let it rip. It's going to be a teaching moment for Coach John Paul this week.
There's Sutherland. Sutherland scored the first Michigan goal. Wolverines got down 2-0, came back quickly, tied the game at 2, and it's been all Maryland since then. Saved by Cameron Brosh, backup goalie in for Maryland.
So you see that they've kept noseworthy Sutherland and Ian King, and we talked to Coach Paul about that this week because he's done it before in games where they're struggling, and this is part of the teaching for Michigan. He wants these guys to learn how to finish games, right? Claw your way back into this. Yes, you're not going to win, but punch in 3 or 4 more and learn how to compete in these big games, right? We know what you can do against Cleveland State. We know what you can do against the Baylor Mines, the Detroit Mercies of the world, but these are the games that Coach Paul wants to see his guys learn how to compete in and really scrap for those extra goals in tight fourth quarters.
So Big Ten play underway. Maryland is going to go to 1-0 in conference. Hopkins scored a 6-goal win against Rutgers last night. And then you've got Ohio State, Penn State tomorrow. And with Notre Dame's loss to Syracuse today, the winner of the Buckeyes-Nittany Lions game could be #1 in the polls come Monday. 34-33 seconds and ticking in this one. Duke, Carolina, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU tomorrow night. Both looking for their first ACC win. It's the ACC opener for UNC. Carolina already 4 home losses, 5-4. The margin for error is almost non-existent for the defending champions. Ethan Mintzer, the freshman, in the final seconds of this one. Well, after a little 2-game losing streak, Maryland has looked mighty impressive the last 2 weeks. An 8-goal win last week against the defending champs. A 7-goal win in the Big Ten opener. For Ryan Flanagan, I'm Anish Schraub. The Terps take it 15-8. Softball next here on ESPNU.